off my allergies.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Tom Merritt, the time is now. The place is here.
Here we go.
We are the people who make it happen. It starts in 3, 2, 1.
I have
Current Geek!
Aha.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Current Geek. This is Current Geek, the weekly proceedings of the meetings. No, that's not true. Welcome to Current Geek. It's a talk show about interests of geeks, or interests of the geeks of the world around the... You know what I shouldn't do? I shouldn't sneeze right before I do the intro. That's what I did. I sneezed, and I thought, oh, this will be fine. I'll sneeze. It'll be over with, and I don't have to worry about it. I put the cough switch down. But
Scott's like, I want to raise the difficulty level on this podcast.
It jumbled my thoughts and my words. Anyway, we're going to talk about nerd stuff, all right? And it's going to be good because you guys are going to like it.
Is that good enough for you?
Yeah.
I'm Tom Merritt.
Hi, Tom Merritt. I'm Scott Johnson, and welcome to the show.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, man. Allergies, stuff in the air. It's spring.
You have basically as if you have been at E3, it sounds like.
Kind of feel like
it so much. My gosh.
I feel like that's true. We did 12 hours of commentary and content, and it does kind of feel like we go when we do this.
You got con crud through the internet.
Maybe. Something like that. I think there's just weird stuff floating around outside. But, hey, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that E3 is sort of done. I mean, it's still a show, and it's still happening, and we're going to get a lot of impressions over the next few days. But the big bits, like the big announcements, all that stuff is done. So
your impression of Keanu Reeves.
Here goes. Whoa. How's that? Oh, you mean my impression of him showing up? No, that was awesome that he showed up.
No, I liked what you did.
Oh, you liked what I did? Okay, well, we'll live with that then.
It was breathtaking.
Thank you. Here's now another breathtaking moment in Current Geek history.
Herbert Hoover, Secretary of Commerce in 1922, finds infant radio facilitates news gathering, as do many others in high public office.
Tom, what happened this week?
E3 happened to all of us. There isn't one particular thing we could talk about. Google Stadia, which really wasn't even at E3. We could talk about Microsoft's Project X, which they didn't really announce much about, except maybe in October we'll get the ability to play some games from our own Xboxes on other stuff. There was Project Scarlet, the next Xbox, coming in a year and a half from now, but not much about that we wouldn't have guessed. It's specs that they did announce seem pretty close to the Sony PlayStation next version, whatever they call that. You've been like not even knee deep. You have been hair deep in E3 over the past weekend. What's standing out to you, Scott?
Well, okay, so it's been a weird year. I went in with some funny expectations. I went in this year thinking, ooh, the big transition year. Sony basically laid out prior to the show their plans for their hardware, like very specific hardware stuff. And so I thought, oh, well, if they're that specific and they're getting this out in front of E3, a show they're not attending this year, Microsoft must be, poised to do a full reveal. I thought we'd get photos of the machine that we'd see.
It's
controllers.
The Xbox 720. It's
right.
The Xbox 12, whatever.
Whatever weird name they're going to give it, I was sure that we were going to get it. And
I really hope it becomes the Xbox Double X.
That'd be awesome, right? Oh, the Double X. It's when you get to the Triple X that you need to tell the kids to not watch. But
the Xbox Dos X.
I was very, very much thinking that's where we were headed this year, and that's just not where we are. We're a year from that. Like next E3 is that. And so I got a little ahead of myself. Once I reset my expectations, it's fine. It's a lot of companies getting up doing presentations about games that are going to come out. For some reason, next spring is very heavily front-loaded. I think a lot of stuff's going to get delayed just so it doesn't get overwhelmed, not because they won't be done, but because they don't want to compete with everybody in that window.
But it's the movie scheduling issue, right? Where you move a movie premiere, not because you don't think it'll do well, but because it's up against Star Wars or something like that.
That's exactly true. So I think that'll happen. It hasn't yet, but there were a lot of announcements in that zone. And a lot of exciting things, but also a lot of stuff we already knew about. We have release dates for big stuff that was talked about last year, like Cyberpunk has a release date. And a week prior to that, we got a release date from Sony for Death Stranding. So a lot of big, high-profile titles now have a home in the timeline, and that's great. But what we're not seeing this year is next-generation announcements. Technically, Halo Infinite is supposed to be a a machine, or excuse me, a game that would run on Microsoft's next generation machine, but you couldn't really tell from the video. It was kind of pre-rendered scripted, so it's hard to tell what that thing was showing. So for the most part, this is not a year where everyone's like, and here's the next level. It's more like, here's the long tail.
It seemed like E3 was kind of smeared over everything, right? You had a lot of like Sony, Stadia, even some game announcements happened well before the weekend press conferences, which always happen before the shows open.
Right.
And then the announcements were kind of all over the place too. Very game heavy, which is not a problem. It's a gaming expo.
Right.
But even like things like Ubisoft announcing a television show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically they had a
2 television shows.
They had a collaboration with I forgot the guy's name, but the guy it's always sunny in Philadelphia. That guy, one of those
Kevin
guys.
McClaney.
There you go, that guy. They worked with him on sort of issues of authenticity. So it's not so much they helped produce it so much as they were sort of like off to the side. There's a word for that. Anyway, they helped. So that when this thing came off and they put it on, because it's actually going to be on Apple's new TV network.
Apple TV Plus. Yeah.
Correct. And they want authenticity. They want gamers and tech nerds to see that show and not feel like it's just this, like they're just pandering to a nerd demographic or something. They wanted it to come off as real. It's kind of hard to tell from that trailer if they're going to achieve that or not.
It seemed like Ubisoft licensed out some stuff, did some rendering to make the mythical video game that's part of the plot of the show happen. But then they're also doing a Netflix series, right?
Yeah, so there's talk of a Netflix series, and I don't know how much involvement they'll have directly in writing or production. It might be
I think that's just licensing out the story, it seemed like.
I think so too. It's a bit like what you saw with Castlevania on Netflix, which was an animated series. I'm all in on that though. Like if more video game properties being realized for serial television, I think is great for those who like that kind of entertainment. It's a perfect time to do it. Really talented people involved. It's not garbage like it used to be in the 70s and 80s when somebody would try to adapt this sort of thing. So I think that's all good. And they had I think Ubisoft actually had one of the better conferences. But as a whole, the entire conference was just mostly known quantities or things that are just kind of in the long tail of the current generation. And the only place that really bucks that ever is like Nintendo, because Nintendo's hardware isn't necessarily tied to the same generation. It's not the most powerful hardware. It never was meant to be. They have different reasons why their stuff's successful. And so they focused on their core products and stuff people want to hear from Nintendo. And so things like Animal Crossing coming out and
getting delayed. But
yeah, that's true. But there's also, and that's true. That video made up for it for me. I'm very excited about that game because I'm a sucker for that thing.
We are an Animal Crossing household here as well.
Oh, dude, I don't know what my problem is.
I played Pocket Camp well beyond the amount of time I should have been playing Pocket Camp.
Yeah, and Pocket Camp
I just stopped playing Pocket Camp in like January or February.
That's pretty good, actually. You went You went really long in that.
It was ridiculous.
But the core game is really something special in my own opinion. But the announcement of a Breath of the Wild sequel, essentially,
Death of the Wild,
super exciting. Right. Death of the Wild. So there's stuff going on there that are kind of in their little own biome. But yeah, I mean, it's the kind of conference I can't come away going, oh my gosh, next level, baby.
Yeah.
It was more like, oh my gosh, we are really at the end of this particular run. We're about to enter the new one. That'll be exciting. So next year will be lit. Like it'll be off the charts. It'll
be interesting to see if Sony attends E3 to announce. Well, it'll be interesting to see if they attend at all.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see if they announce their stuff there, or if you remember when they did the PS4, they kind of did it both ways. They did their own announcement with most of the details, I think, except the name.
Yep.
And then at E3, they revealed, it's the PlayStation 4. And we're all like, yeah, okay, that's kind of what we thought you'd do.
Sony started using their PSX event as a way to get out in front of it. And I think that was experimental in a way. But in a lot of ways, Nintendo broke new ground by doing the Direct
Nintendo
videos.
Direct, yeah.
And they do that as a way to not only, avoid the rigors that is E3 and trying to put that show on, but also it lets them really tailor their message and speak directly to the audience. And I think this is the way going forward. I hate to tell E3 this, but this is kind of going to be the way a lot of these companies start to go. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft figures out their own independent ways to really push what's next, and maybe they don't have as big a presence at E3. It's entirely possible given so many people dropped out this year.
There's
So-
a difference between the announcements and presence.
Right.
Nintendo has a presence at E3.
Right.
They have a booth. They do events, but they don't do an announcement at E3. They don't do a press conference. Those press conferences aren't part of E3 anyway.
Right.
Those were always held before the show opens in a separate venue, nearby, but a separate venue. So Sony, I don't think E3 minds that Nintendo does it that way. I think they like that because it actually brings people to the show floor. Because they can watch Nintendo Direct at E3 that way versus some other thing 2 days before just for the press.
Yeah.
So if Microsoft wanted to do that, if Sony wanted to do that, I'm not sure that E3 would care that much. As long as it keeps people excited about trying out the stuff and seeing the stuff on the show floor, that's all E3 cares about.
Yeah, the bigger issue is when big publishers like EA moves off-site completely and they don't have a presence on the actual show floor, and Activision
That's a
stopped
bigger deal.
going.
You're right.
Like when that starts to happen, that erodes at their basic reason for existing. But yes, this announcement stuff doesn't need to be this traditional let's rent out a theater and fill it full of mostly our own employees that are rah-rahing us the whole time, and do it in a more sort of intimate, direct way. Like that's where we're headed as a people, so we may as well do that with our video game announcements, and I'm 100% cool with it. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, would I miss it? Like, is there part of this pageantry that I enjoy? Yes. Do I want to see a small orchestra playing Assassin's Creed music for the opener of Ubisoft? Yeah, that's cool. Like, it's a cool little thing. They went to this extra effort and expense, but at the end of the day, what I'm really there for are what games are you working on? What's new? What's current? What are you doing to support the current games you have? And then out you go. Like, that's really what I came for. So all those incidentals will probably just melt away, and everybody will eventually be doing this. And maybe E3 itself becomes more of this, and the hands-on is about, some of the press meeting with developers behind closed doors in a place and then reporting on it, and everything's cheaper for everybody. Like, maybe. But that's been an interesting part of this year is so many voices were not there. There should have been a huge Sony press conference on Tuesday night. It's been that way since forever, and there wasn't one this year. That was weird. And to have the console leader not there is so weird.
I wonder how weird it was at E3. It's weird for us outside of it, right?
Yeah.
I say outside of it, even though I'm in LA, but I haven't been to the convention center, right?
Right.
Whereas if you're there on the show floor, it may not feel that weird because there's so much going on. I think E3, I remember that one year E3 just did the hotel. They didn't even do the convention center and all of that. I wonder if they're becoming comfortable with being a fan convention because they've now opened that up. It's not just a trade show, and saying, let's let the trade people do their trade thing. We'll still provide a venue for that at E3 because there is still a demand for it. But let's actually make this more of a Comic-Con.
It's entirely possible they could go that way and really succeed at it. But from what I hear, people on the ground say that they're not particularly good at the public side, and that they would need better management, better people, better whatever, better planning for it to transition well into a more Comic-Con or PAX kind of event to be better for those sort of general public visitors. So right now they're just kind of in the middle somewhere. Like it's okay for press and it's okay for the walk-ins, but it's not great for anybody. So I think there's not a lot of work that has to be done there. And look, I actually don't want a world without E3. I love the idea of this one time a year. And there are now many times of years with different emphasis, but this is still that one big marquee thing that I would really sorely miss if it didn't exist. I love it. I love the idea that it even happens. But I just also, to be realistic, I think we're just moving into a space where because these companies can directly connect with their fans so quickly and so easily via Twitch, via YouTube, via a million other live streaming ways, pre-recorded and post ways, all the ways they can do it, and their own events for that matter, it's just starting to make it obsolete. So
if the convention has a reason to exist beyond the press announcements, it'll survive.
Yes.
That's what's going to have to happen. Macworld did not survive because Macworld couldn't find a reason to continue the event without Apple there to do keynotes.
That's exactly right.
Once Apple went off and did keynotes on their own, that was it. But Mac stock arose and is now doing all the things that people love to do as fans of Apple at Macworld. CES lost Microsoft as their keynote, but they still continue to get industry veterans. They have tons of press conferences from Samsung and LG, and they shifted into a more consumer electronics focused versus computer focused area. And so yeah, I think you're definitely going to see whether E3 has enough steam to continue if it's not the straight venue. Because I think you're right. Microsoft, Sony, they're all realizing that it is more cost effective to have control over the message themselves. And I think fans like it too. Because unless you're one of the few people who actually can be at the press conference, you don't really care whether it's at E3 or not. Just tell me the stuff.
Yeah, just tell us the stuff. We're smart enough to figure it out and know, and we'll move forward. If I had to tell you my handful of things that I think are going to be real big deals from the show, this doesn't count any Sony stuff because that happened before. Just stick to E3. I would say xCloud has the potential of being a gigantic, awesome thing for Microsoft. And them opening up a PC version of the Game Pass this week was a big deal. I immediately signed up for it. And them having a combined pass for that for Xbox One and PC users is brilliant, and they're going to do really well with that as a service. So that was my maybe my favorite takeaway from the whole thing. Games-wise, it's things like Animal Crossing. The Avengers game from Square Enix looks pretty amazing. We don't have enough details to make a real big call on this. And then maybe the one that's the most ambitious and looks the most interesting is from Ubisoft. It is a part of the Watch Dogs series, Watch Dogs 1 and 2. This game is called Watch Dogs Legion. They've dropped the sequel number and instead are moving to a pretty ambitious plan to make it so you can play almost anybody in that game that you feel like playing. And death is real, and you move on to new characters that are just in the world. They have their own voices, their own animations. You do missions with different people because they have better abilities to do certain missions than others. It's a lot there. People should go look it up if you want to know the real details outside of this show, but suffice it to say, it looked very ambitious, and maybe that'll make it hard to succeed, but I think it looks like it could be amazing. So those were the highlights for me this week.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, we got some non-E3 stuff to talk about today, too. Sacramento's Richfield Park is being renamed after LeVar Burton, host of Reading Rainbow and Star Trek The Next Generation and Roots. Burton was born in Germany. He moved to California when he was 3 years old and was raised in Sacramento along with his two sisters, and his mother and sisters still live in Northwest Sacramento. So he comes back there regularly to visit, and he's got a park named after him. And I couldn't imagine it would happen to a nicer guy.
So it's really going to be called LeVar Burton Park. Like if you said, where are the playoffs this year? Oh, we're all going to be at LeVar Burton Park.
Yeah. You play your Little League games over at LeVar Burton Park? Probably Burton Park, right?
Yeah. Burton Park.
Yeah. Well, we'll be at Burton Park, the old Richfield Park. You know where it is.
Yeah. I think that's great. Seriously, who would you rather give that to? He's the nicest guy. So why not? And, he's got some connection there. And I think we should name more things after people who...
I think my favorite part of this article is the fact that he still visits his sisters and his mom there in Northwest Sacramento.
Aww.
Yeah, it's just heartwarming to, because Hollywood and all that sort of.
Is it weird that when you say that, I picture him showing up on a Sunday afternoon, coming to see his mom, walks in the house, open the door, and he's wearing one of those Geordie things over his eyes.
He's got the eye thing. Yeah. Remember, Geordie doesn't even have that by the later movies. He's got implants. So.
Yeah, I can't help it though. I just picture it. But anyway, that's awesome, and may all our parks be named after our favorite science fiction heroes. And read a book.
There's a trailer out for the Netflix production of Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, headed to Netflix August 30th. It's a prequel following three young gelflings, Ryan, voiced by Taron Egerton, Deet, voiced by Nathalie Emmanuel, and Bria, voiced by Anya Taylor-Joy, as they navigate a Thra still under the sinister clutches of the villainous Skeksis.
I saw this. It's awesome. Why it's awesome? Because it appears to be very puppety.
Yeah.
Not all CGI'd up and stuff. I'm sure there are things in it that are benefited by CGI, probably big open vistas and things that we don't even notice in shows anymore now. Even, you can't watch CSI without there being some CGI help somewhere. But the fact that the main characters and most of the action is happening in a very puppety way is exactly what I was hoping for from this.
And it's getting a video game too.
Oh yeah, we saw that. It was today.
Yeah.
Nintendo, I think, showed it. Yeah, it was on the Nintendo thing, and that looked all right. Some kind of tactics game.
Switch.
Yeah, 2D, not 2D, but a top-down sort of turn. Yeah, Tutti Frutti. A 2D.
Like
That's not
Facts
2D.
of Life.
I keep saying 2D. Turn-based is what I'm trying to say. tactics game, which no one expected. I didn't see that coming. But
Joe, Blair, Tootie, whatever.
do they? How many episodes is this thing? I know it's a limited series, but I don't see the number. It's too bad. Anyway, whatever it is, I don't care. I'm stoked. I hope this is as awesome as it looks. You're a big fan of the old thing, right? It's cool, Dark Crystal.
I'm not as big as many of my friends. I hesitate to admit that because I feel Brian Brushwood about to jump out from behind a door and throw something at me, but I do like it. I did watch it and I love it. I say that more as a defense against, if people start to go like, you said Skeeksis on Port Killers the other day. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. That was a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's a weird world. Jim Henson's non-Muppet stuff was a huge draw for me when I was younger because it was so weird and not normal like this, and everything in that movie Labyrinth is really cool. Like that side of Henson fascinates me. The storyteller was always awesome, all those seasons of that. So this is a long time waiting. I mean, what was that movie? It's like 81 or 82 or something. It was a long time ago. Time to get our Skeksis on. And
Silicon Valley is going to end after season 6, and The Good Place is going to end after season 4. Silicon Valley and Good Place both have kind of come to the end of their story, and they don't want to overstay their welcome. NBC says that when you count multiple platforms and streaming, The Good Place is actually the network's most watched show. Creator Mike Schur said they mapped out the trajectory of the show after it got picked up for a second season, and they came up with 4, and they've been tempted to go beyond 4 seasons, but Schur says mostly because making the show is a rare, creatively fulfilling joy. And at the end of the day, we don't want to tread water just because the water is so warm and pleasant.
Oh, that's a great way to put that. Sure. I mean, I rather have I like planned obsolescence for TV shows. Like it's the one place I like it because that means the creators get to choose when they go out. And there was all that stuff about Lost. Lost was the biggest show on TV. Everybody was tuning in every week and it was getting huge ratings. And at some point they had to ask themselves, oh man, we've never really had one of these. And what are we going to do? Do we get to choose where it ends? I remember all of that talk back then. And then they finally did it. They picked a time. They said, all right, we're 2 years away from the finish, blah, blah, blah. But now you see it all the time. Weird little shows on cable will last 3 seasons, and you'll find out, oh, that's exactly what they wrote it for. They didn't want it to be any longer or any shorter. And so I admire this. Even though I end up missing the thing they take away, I think I admire it.
It's the same thing as wanting a book to be longer, but not really wanting it to be longer, right? If you read a book that you love, you're like, oh, I wish there was more. But I'm glad that they didn't just like pad the book with a bunch of BS at the end, right?
Right.
Same thing. I'm going to be sad when The Good Place is done. I'm going to wish there was more. But I'm also going to be glad that they didn't, have Ted Danson leave and Kristen Bell leave and replace them. And I mean, as fun as that was in MASH history, I just wouldn't want to see that happen.
Yeah, they just don't do that anymore. Plus, they can create for, I don't know. I just like to be able to, the idea of having a vision, knowing when you want to go out and then going out. And I'm sure that if the network really wanted to pressure them, they maybe would have tried. But maybe this is NBC also realizing, this is the way this thing's supposed to go. I don't know. Silicon Valley, I never watched, but I plan on binging at some point because I do like Mike Judge a lot. And it's been
also, it's so metaphorically true.
Yeah.
Like I don't even, even though I do Daily Tech News Show, I'm not that deep into the Silicon Valley world, but there are people I know who have been turned into characters on that show.
Really?
It's just so correct. Like, It's not accurate in a literal sense, but everything is like, yeah, no, I know who that's based on, or I know the type of person that's based on, or I've seen that kind of thing actually happen. Like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I need to just get in there and binge it. I guess now's the time because if season 6 ends.
Yeah.
Soon.
Catch up before the end. You can enjoy the end with everybody else.
I did that with Veep. That was fun because I was way behind on that, and I enjoyed the hell out of that. So, yeah, welcome to the future. We'll watch it all now.
NASA announced it will open more of its part of the International Space Station to commercial opportunities. The new interim directive lets private companies buy time and space on the International Space Station for producing, marketing, or testing products, using resources for commercial purposes, or even renting a small amount of astronauts' time and expertise, though not their likeness. So you're not going to see astronauts shooting Tang commercials up there. Companies can send their own astronauts starting as early as 2020 to do this stuff. NASA also called for private space companies to propose ideas for new habitats or modules that could be attached to the ISS. NASA will allocate 5% of its resources to commercial activities, so 95% still non-commercial. Up to 175 kilograms of commercial cargo can be sent per year, and NASA crew will be allowed to dedicate up to 90 hours to commercial activities per year. Bigelow Aerospace already says it has booked 4 private flights on a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft to execute some plans they have. That is Bigelow Aerospace, not Bigelow T. Different company.
Yeah, big difference between those two.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, one is Constant Comment, the other is in space.
I know that I know it's not new, especially cargo and stuff, or satellites in some cases, or whatever. The idea of commercial stuff going up in these aircraft and being deployed, but that does seem like an uptick in all the things you could do. Like. Do you see this as an uptick in the commercialization of the space program, or?
Yes, it is an uptick, absolutely an uptick, and a planned uptick in the commercialization of space. Because up until now, the Soviet side, man, I'm dating myself. The Russian side of the International Space Station has allowed commercial activity. They had tourists and things like that, and it's still pretty limited. But the United States side has said absolutely not. We'll do educational partnerships. We'll do nonprofit partnerships. So you'll see for-profit companies doing things on the ISS, but they always had to be clearly non-commercial.
Right.
And this alleviates that and says, yeah, you wanna shoot a piece of video for a film up here? Great, you can do that. Doesn't have to be research-based anymore. Doesn't have to be educationally based anymore. Although most of the things that will be done on the ISS are meant to be that still. They're only opening up a small amount of time for that. That said, the point is the ISS is old. It's been around for a long time. It's and NASA wants to free up some of its resources to do the next thing on their docket and to do more scientific exploration and to do the first woman on the moon and all that sort of thing. So to do that, it makes sense to release some of the resources that are on the ISS to private companies and to make some money while they do that.
I think it's great. I don't have a problem with it. Some people are going to see that as, freaking, it's commercialization of this thing that's otherwise pure science or whatever. And I say to them, yeah, get over it. You got to pay for it somehow. So it's fine. You got NASA and all the other countries and their space programs. But also now you got all these crazy new upstarts, SpaceX and freaking Virgin and all these people. What's his name over at Amazon? They all got their ideas. They all got their plans. It's going commercial whether we like it or not. It's part of human advancement. So just let it happen. Help it pay for itself. The market will decide. I'm getting all libertarian on you, Tom. That's what's happening.
Well, I love it. It's a whole new you. Also, it's no different than what we did with satellites, right? Like they started to allow commercial satellites in space at some point, rather than saying only NASA can send up satellites. And that was because NASA wanted to move on to the next thing. So I feel like this isn't even just a libertarian thing so much as it is a natural evolution of, okay, we've done the job of NASA, which is to explore and establish how something is done. And now that it's established, we can begin handing it over to other people to do whatever they want. The fact that it's commercial might set some people's teeth on edge, but when you hand it over and say, okay, anybody can do what they want, that means anybody can do what they want, including make money. And what do most people want to do when they do things? They want to make money.
They like to make money with their daytime hours, for sure. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Also, it's not like they're not vetting any of this or just any old, I can't go up there tomorrow. Like,
right.
It's not like that.
Right. And it's starting with a limited amount of resources and time.
Right. It'll all be fine. Well, I think that's a great story. All of these are, it turns out, because we have really smart, considerate subredditors who submit these stories. Tom, who should we give credit to this week?
I love our subreddit. And if people don't realize it, I read it even when I'm not prepping for a show, because there's so many interesting things that get submitted there. Thanks this week to Jeff Rose, A Whatnot, Strike It Rich 1, and Gadget Chaser, who all submitted stories we used at currentgeek.reddit.com. Just make it a part of your regular day to just go in and see what's been submitted, maybe submit some things yourself and vote on the things that are submitted, and it'll help us make a better show.
Nice. I like that a lot. Check this out. Time for us to but have a little time with Keep on Rolling, where Tom reads Scott some passages from French literary critic Roland Barthes, and his seminal work, Mythologies. Tom, take it away. Barthes. But
So this one is called Blind and Dumb Criticism.
all right, I like it. Both of
It's
those.
about critics,
Okay.
right? We talk a lot about critics. So what do the critics think?
Yeah.
The reality behind this seasonally professed lack of culture, which critics sort of saying, I'm just a critic, is the old obscurantist myth, according to which ideas are noxious if they are not controlled by common sense and feeling. Knowledge is evil. They both grew on the same tree, but culture is allowed on condition that it is periodically proclaimed vanity and its ends and limits of its power. See also on this subject the ideas of Mr. Graham Greene on psychologists and psychiatrists. Ideally, culture should be nothing but a sweet rhetorical effusion, an art of using words to bear witness to a transient moistening of the soul.
Wow. I have a question that just came up in my head. He's French, but does he make
Yes.
these proclamations in English or are these translations?
These are translations.
Interesting. That's even more interesting to me, that they found a way to translate that highfalutin business into English from whatever it is in French. It's amazing.
Roland Barthes was born in 1915, studied French literature and classics at the University of Paris, and after teaching French at universities in Romania and Egypt, he joined the Centre National de Recherche Scientifique, where he devoted himself to research in sociology and lexicology. He was a professor at the Collège de France until his death in 1980.
Man. Well, there you go. I enjoy that segment. And if many of you do, if you like that segment, you like the news we talk about on here, you like our alternate episodes where we talk about pilots of cool TV shows, or better yet, our film festival that we do every month, well, why don't you head on over to help us out at patreon.com/currentgeek. That's patreon.com/currentgeek. We'd love your help today.
The future promises even more startling things to come.
It's time for a forecast. Now, I'm told that this forecast did not come from me or you.
Nope.
Who did this come from?
This came from Ms. Jenny Josephson,
Wow.
senior advisor to Daily Tech News Show, frequent Current Geek guest. And her submission to forecast this week is within 5 years, ladies and gentlemen, Wolverine, as played by Hugh Jackman, will appear in a Marvel movie.
Whoa. Not really done then, because he says he's done. But
He says he's done. Jenny says he's lying.
All right, so we were talking about this on TMS. We have this theory that the only thing that could have been done to make Endgame even more cool is if during that big battle, this is not a spoiler, there's a giant battle, everybody, big shocker. In the battle, if there would have been even just the shot behind somebody in a white tank top, jeans, and his arm shooting out with 3 blades popping, and then running toward the business, that would have been cool. If they'd gotten a little help from the Fantastic Four, maybe just a few little things like that would have been rad. Wolverine, of course, being a big Avenger at one point in the comics, anyway. So, it's all in Disney's hands now. So why don't they? And I don't know why they didn't with that, but I could see this happening. Whether it's him or not, I don't know. What if it's de-aged Hugh Jackman? Will that work, or is that too weird? You can't do a whole movie with him.
You're right. De-aging Wolverine is interesting because do you de-age Hugh Jackman?
Right.
Or do you de-age Wolverine?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically did Old Man Logan in Logan. So we've done that. And he's not that old, but he's, and he wants to kind of move on. I personally would be okay if they talked about a recast at some point. It's okay. We have to be ready for that with a lot of things. I think we're done with Iron Man as currently constituted.
We actually talked quite a bit on Cord Killers about what's the future of X-Men. And the one thing we were certain of is it's rebooted, right?
Oh, yeah.
Whenever Disney decides to bring X-Men back, it will be an entirely new storyline, an entirely new cast.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I disagree with this prediction. I don't know that they will reboot Wolverine anytime soon. And what if they did what you guys are talking about? The reason they couldn't with Endgame is the transaction to acquire Fox wasn't done. They didn't have those rights. And even once the transaction was done, which I think happened before the movie was actually released in theaters, they didn't have time to just kind of go through and unravel the licensing and all of that to make something small like that happen. So now is the opportunity. Now they own 20th Century Fox. Now they got the rights back. Now they can do it. And I wonder if they do. It just feels so tempting within the next 5 years, because let's say they decided, you know what, we're not going to reboot X-Men for another 10 years or so. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not bring him in?
But Hugh Jackman will be, if they do it in 5 years, he'll be 60. Like, he's 55 or something right now. He's older. So I don't know if they're going to do that unless they want to do some kind of transition or something. That I could see. Or they'd have to do it right away. Or they do something technology-wise that would make him younger for a brief moment. Or we just recast him. Like, I could convince Jenny, in particular, that Chris Pine would make a fine Hugh Jackman, because she loves Chris Pine and she won't deny it. So I could do that. I could talk her into Chris Pine. But just about any other actor, like, there's got to be somebody who's perfect for Wolverine, and we've got to get to a place where we're okay replacing the guy. So as much as I want her prediction to come true, I'm going to take the other side and say no, he won't. I'm going to say that they're done.
All right.
It's possible, and I don't say I don't want it. I do want it. But I'm just saying I just can't. I just have a hard time seeing it. That's all. But he should be an Avenger, because he was for a long time, and he was great as an Avenger. The Hulk would throw him places. It was fantastic.
Man, yeah, I think everybody would like to see that, and that's why I want her to be right. I want there to be a window in which they make this happen, and even if it's an alternate reality, right? Mm-hmm. Like, maybe they visit alternate realities in some future Marvel movie, and in one of them, Wolverine and Hulk are just hanging out playing chess.
I'd be all into that. It's absolutely 100% into that. That's a great idea. All right, let's talk about this right here. It's the best thing of all time this week. That's right. Something we love that we're doing this week that's the best thing of all time, but only for this week. And Tom, I'll let you start. You got a nice one here. What's this?
I happened across a brief campaign of Cotton Bureau where Will Wheaton had an idea for a T-shirt, got R. Stevens from Diesel Sweeties to design it, and it arrived. And it's a beautifully comfortable shirt of Trek Side of the Moon.
Oh, it's like the Pink Floyd album, but with the Star Trek symbol instead of the whatever it is usually there. What's usually there?
And it's a prism.
Oh,
usually.
A prism, right.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember now.
It's the Dark Side of the Moon logo, but with the Trek symbol instead of the prism, and it's insanely comfortable.
And is it Diesel Sweetie style, like pixels and stuff, little pixels?
No, it's not really.
Interesting.
It's just he just did the art because I think he's Will's buddy.
Okay, well, I like that. That's cool. I was just curious if he stuck to his usual style, which is
no. It's really the Dark Side of the Moon style, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. TV's Will Wheaton, everybody. Look for Will Wheaton Park coming to Sacramento sometime in the fall. That part's not true at all.
I've been. I don't want to get too weird, but it's very comfortable. I can fall asleep easy in that shirt.
Yeah,
it's my pajama shirt.
Do you play the music while you do it? Do you play a little of the Pink Floyd?
No, you mean like dun, da, da, da,
yeah.
Da, da,
well, no, I meant like actual Pink Floyd, but that's cool too. You could listen to Star Trek versions of the Pink Floyd soundtrack. I think that'd be fine. For me this week, it's kind of a dumb thing, but I have to do it because for whatever reason I'm really into it. Now, Tom, you know golfers. You're probably familiar with some pro golf. Do you remember a guy named Arnold Palmer? Do you remember him?
Yeah, I love his drinks.
Well, I got good news for you because that's what I'm talking about today. The Arnold Palmer. It's a half and half. It's half iced tea, half lemonade. That's always been the combo. He used to go to bars and places. Everybody else would load up on whatever, and they would say, "What do you want, sir?" And he'd say, "I'd like half and half, iced tea and lemonade." And they'd put it together, and eventually it became called the Arnold Palmer. So when you'd order it, that would be the thing you'd order. Well, I didn't realize this because I'm dumb, but I used to go to the store and look for these big cans that had Arnold's picture on it. And he's like golfing, with a swing up here and looking like Arnold Palmer and everything. And then it would be his drink. And I love them. The big, tall, light cans are super good. But they're kind of expensive. And then somebody told me, that Lipton half and half, that's the same thing.
They just can't call it Arnold Palmer because...
Yeah.
Okay, but that's an interesting question. And maybe Legal Geek can weigh in on this. If I go to a bar and order an Arnold Palmer, and they know what I mean and they give it to me, I get it. I'm using a term they understand. They're not branding it.
Right.
But what if I see on the menu Arnold Palmer? Is that like a fair use, or is that infringing on the trademark to call a menu and call it Arnold Palmer if they're just mixing iced tea and lemonade in the back?
Yeah, that would be
without
fascinating.
permission?
Yeah, I don't know. Because the cans I used to buy have his image, and now I think I understand why they were so expensive, because they have his image on them. It's some sort
of course.
licensed thing.
And
but,
it has been genericized, but that doesn't mean they've lost their trademark protection.
right. So you're probably okay in bars, just like if you order a white Russian. Well, that's not really a person, though. But like if you, I'm trying to think of another one.
The country of Belarus, which means white Russia, will sue you. If you
Whoa, that would be a bad bill. No, but like if you, I'm trying to think of another drink or something that's named after somebody.
yeah, like Shirley Temple.
Okay, there you go. That's a good one. If I get a Shirley Temple at a bar, it's the same. It's like ordering an Arnold Palmer. They don't care. They just give you the thing.
But Shirley Temple also is no longer alive to defend her trademark, but maybe her estate would be. I don't know.
Because he's dead too. I don't know who defends.
There's also
Arnold
the Roy
Palmer.
Rogers. That's another one.
Oh, is that a drink? I can get a Roy Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Now, do they ever? I know you could probably put it in there, but am I ever at risk because I don't really drink? If I'm at a place and I say, hey, I want an Arnold Palmer, do I ever run the risk of that coming with like half rum or something? Probably not, right?
Oh, no, the Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, because the whole idea is that it's this.
Yeah, no, the whole point is that's iced tea and lemonade.
Right, and it's because he didn't like to drink or get sauced while he was on the course or whatever. That was the thing.
Right.
All right. Well, that was my favorite thing this week. And I've gone through like a 6-pack of these, and they're kind of low calorie. Yeah, they're cheap.
And they're the Arnold Palmer branded ones too.
They have no fat. They have no sodium.
Or are you getting the half and half, the Lipton ones?
I'm getting the Lipton half and half. Well, I found these 12 packs for cheap, and they were all Lipton, but it tastes exactly the same as the one fancy
What about
can.
when they call a sandwich the Elvis Presley because it's got peanut butter and banana?
I don't know.
Is that the same thing?
I don't know. See, it's just as easy for you though at a hotel or something to say, "Can I get a peanut butter and banana sandwich?" and not have to worry about the Elvis part.
Well, you could do half and half. My wife is a big fan of the Arnold Palmer, and she's had to explain it once or twice. Where somebody's like, "What is that?" They're like, "Oh, it's half iced tea and half lemonade." Oh yeah, we could do that.
Oh, see, I don't think I've ever actually ordered one at a bar. I should try that. See what they say.
She's ordered them at restaurants sometimes.
Or you're in a restaurant. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, anyway, a Reuben would be great. So I wonder if Paul Rubens can sue you
Apparently,
if you order a Reuben.
TV's Travis says a Luther Vandross is a hamburger that uses donuts for the bun.
Shut up. That's not true. Is that true?
I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just saying, passing along what TV's Travis said.
Oh, my gosh. I hope that's true. That's funny. All right. We're going to go read a quick email before we go today. Now, here's the deal. We did 12 Angry Men, which apparently Tom and I have both been like yelling high and wide because everybody we tell to go watch it seems to be watching it and then coming back saying, Scott and Tom are right. This movie holds up. I noticed Schwood had just watched it with his daughter and was raving about it.
He was asking for things. He's been watching like E.T. and stuff with his kids, Jaws. And he asked for something to watch, and I was like, you know what was really good that Scott and I just watched? And he went and watched it with his daughter, and he said it was great. It was magical.
Yeah, it makes me very happy to hear that because it's great. And we got a lot of people saying the same thing in emails and tweets and stuff. But Thomas from Missouri had this to say. Hi, Scott and Tom. Just watched the 12 Angry Men episode of Current Geek Film Festival, and I think I have an interesting take on the film since I completed jury duty last month.
Oh, nice.
I wasn't picked to actually sit in the jury, but spent the day answering questions in the voir dire process. I guess that's how you say that. I have no idea.
Sure.
The thing I take away from my experience is that the 12 men picked for the jury in the film would probably not pass today's questioning. The questions went into all kinds of areas, including if people involved in a trial were known to be potential jurors, if past experiences created a prejudice of any kind. Even the defendant's past crimes were brought up to determine if these would create a bias in the jurors. The defense lawyer even let us know the basics of her defense without going into specifics or giving away testimony, so we could decide if that would make us make us less or more impartial. The juries, or the potential jurors, were a diverse group that included women and different racial groups. In the end, I wasn't picked, and I'm kind of glad I wasn't. I'm not sure I'm the person to have someone's freedom in my hands. Anyway, I keep saying this, but I really enjoy the film festival movies. I don't think I would have seen this excellent film if it wasn't for CurrentGeek. So thank you for that. Keep up the good work, Thomas from Missouri. Well, first of all,
it's a really good point because certainly the types of people picked on juries now would be different than it was in the 1950s. But this movie has been remade in so many ways with different cast members. We got so many people on Twitter today responding to Schwood's tweet saying like, yeah, I was in this with my daughter in a theater presentation in my community and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the points of view of the jury members certainly could be represented because they ask you like will you be do you think you can be fair and impartial, and juror number what was the one that held everybody up? It was the last one to convert. I can't remember. Was he juror 3
something? Yeah,
they would say, juror 3, do you think you can be fair and impartial? And he'd say, yes, I absolutely will. Doesn't mean he will.
Mm-hmm.
It means he's convinced them like, well, I guess he looks like he's telling the truth. All right. We can't find anything in his background that says he wouldn't. So you can't find out all those prejudices in discovery and in the voir dire process.
Well, even people who exhibit those prejudices don't necessarily think they've got them. Like when he says, yes, I can be impartial, he may think he is. But once he gets in there and he gets him in the mix with 11 other people, he may find out.
Especially because, not to be too spoilery if you haven't watched the movie, because this isn't that episode, but early in the process, he presents himself as the fair one.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, let's listen to everything, right?
Right.
And then you slowly see his prejudices and his biases unveiled as he gets more and more frustrated. So I could see him going through jury selection just fine,
Mm-hmm.
and people like, oh yeah, no, he's good.
Yeah, I remember there's a great line in The Simpsons when they're talking about teamwork and how great everybody's teamwork is, and Lenny and Carl, who work with Homer, they were all talking about great teamwork, guys. And when the two others left, he goes, yeah, my teamwork, meaning, he thinks it's all him. I think there's a lot of that going on here. There's a lot of sort of everyone goes in thinking they've got the most open mind or the most analytical mind, or they're going to be able to tell who's lying and who isn't or whatever. And then when it comes right down to it, it's all just like a matter of degrees, and you're not as smart as you think you were, or there's somebody,
the defense and the prosecution only get a certain amount of excuses in jury selection.
Right.
So it's not like it's a process that's going to pick the perfect jury every time. This jury in 12 Angry Men was pretty balanced despite the name of the movie.
Yeah.
When you meet them all, they all seem fairly uncontroversial, right? And I think that's one of the important points of the movie is that people who seem perfectly reasonable may be harboring deeper prejudices, and what seems perfectly reasonable at the beginning of that movie turns out not to be as reasonable as you think.
Mm-hmm. That's why zombie or disaster movies are fun, because you, on the surface, when everything's going okay, everybody looks fair and nice and decent. Once in a while, you have some stereotypic jerk or something, but for the most part, you don't know who's going to panic and run and rustle up the zombies, or you don't know who's going to decide to be the leader and threaten everybody because you took their food or whatever until it happens. Like, that's the fun of these things. And this isn't quite the same as that, but these men in this room, with the heat and the time and all of those other factors, right? Then they start to crack and they start to come out for who they are, which is part of why that movie's so great. So, I'm glad.
And people are Rob Hugo, for instance, suggested like an update would be 6 angry men and 6 women. There've been lots of versions like that where they've had a much more diverse jury selection, sometimes more women than men even. And that's what's the beauty of the script is it holds up.
Yeah,
it doesn't. And this is something I hadn't really thought about till we watched it for Current Geek. It doesn't rely on who the people playing the jurors are.
All right. And I think we've learned that over time because there's so many, not parodies, but also people lift from this idea and use it in their TV shows, their procedurals or whatever.
Yeah.
And you see this sort of stuff all the time with different kinds of juries.
And there's hundreds, millions of productions of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Just call it, 12 Angry Jurors, and you got Howard.
China. There was a popular one in China called 12 Angry Citizens.
Oh wow, 12 Angry Committed Citizens.
No, they didn't say committed.
No, not committed. All right, they're not committed. That's fine.
They're not insane.
Oh, I see what kind of committed you were talking about. All right. Well, we are grateful for this kind of feedback, Thomas. Thank you for your email. That's awesome.
Yeah,
And
thanks, man.
if you have your own feelings about anything we do here on the show, send your stuff in, currentgeek@gmail.com. That's currentgeek@gmail.com. A reminder that if you stick around to the end of the show, our very own legal geek will be here. This week he looks ahead to the pirate ship copyright case coming to the Supreme Court next fall. If you don't know what that is, well, listen to his segment, as they granted certification this week to review sovereign immunity and copyright law on a pirate ship video case.
Arr.
Yar. We'll see how
There
that
be
goes.
infringement here, Justice.
There's some infringement below deck. Yar. So check that out. That's awesome. We love him, and his stuff's great, so stick around for that. Tom, next week is our autopilot edition of the show. What shall we be approaching with tender hooks, sir?
We will be on our Tinder hooks, swiping left and right as we watch Star Trek Voyager, the third of the big three 90s Star Trek. Star Trek The Next Generation started in the 80s. Voyager ended in the 2000s. But those two and Deep Space Nine all dominated science fiction television in the 90s, along with Babylon 5. I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just saying it was the great 90s era for Star Trek. And so this is the last of those three, and we'll be talking about the pilot of it.
And I know there are people right now going, oh, really? Voyager, that's the worst one, whatever. That's not the point. It may be the worst. I don't know. I don't think it is. I don't think there's any bad Star Trek, but
It's actually
whatever.
one of my favorites.
It's pretty great, I think. But it doesn't matter. The point is we're going to look at this thing. Its juxtaposition with the other shows in that era. It represents the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the end of the TNG style approach to Star Trek. And I think that's fun to talk about. There are characters
Does
here.
Kate Mulgrew's top knot really change the way you view Voyager?
Does it really hold her face up completely? Find out next week on a hard-hitting episode of Current Geek. I'm looking forward to that very much. And I think that's just on Netflix or Hulu, so easy to get.
CBS puts it everywhere. I think you got it. Hulu, Netflix, CBS All Access. You can just like wish it and it'll show up in front of your eyes.
Yeah, so just go watch it and watch along with us, and then we'll talk about it next week here on Current Geek. Again, that is the Star Trek Voyager, Episode 1, Season 1. Is it a two-parter, or what's the deal with that thing? Do we know? I guess we don't know.
It's long. I can't remember if it's a two-parter. And two-parters, sometimes they air it as one and then syndication. We'll tell you all about that next week.
That might be part of the content, actually. All right. Excellent. Before we go, Tom Merritt, anything you'd like to let the fine folks at home know about?
Well, I'm free, and I'm a newsletter, and you can get me in your inbox at freetomnewsletter.com. Every week, I'll tell you an update about my shows that I'm doing and the writing that I'm doing. I've been having a lot of fun kind of leaking out in dribs and drabs this secret world government story. The secret files are available, and the best way to find out about them is at freetomnewsletter.com.
That's fantastic. The thing I would tell people to do is if you liked any of that E3 talk that we had at the top of the show, man, have I got good news for you, because each and every conference, Patrick and I, sometimes John, sometimes Brian and others, we would have some combination of video game nerds all on watching it and giving our commentary live to each and every conference, from Microsoft all the way down to Square Enix. So if you are interested in that at all, there are YouTube versions of every conference. There are audio podcast versions of every conference, and all of it is over at frogpants.com/blog. It's the very first post up there. You'll find all of them in one place, super easy to get, and you can subscribe to either the Boop or the core feed. You can go to Patrick's show called Pixels. We came together like Voltron and covered E3 the best way we know how, and we've been doing this for 5 years, and it's a blast. So do check it out if you are so inclined. It's going to do it for us here at Current Geek, at currentgeek.com. We are, of course, there. And you can email us, currentgeek@gmail.com. Leave us voicemails, 801-471-0462. That's going to do it for us. For me, for Tom. We'll see you next time. Yeah.